Chapter 9. Planning to go bigger.
Sue's dad took a really great video of the Go Big night, which she gave to me, and I put it on the net on my socials and sent out a link to all the people at school, and it went viral, and then it went bananas, and I got hundreds of thousands of views with a super lot of people following me. It was a buzz, and I really didn't know how to really take it in. I told Sebastian the next week, and he was really supportive, though he seemed a little worried for me.
The thing I hope is that you take this on board as a triumph, but please don't let it sway you to think that you want to be a pop star. You are destined for great things, and because you have design and real intelligence, the things you can do are unlimited unless you limit yourself. This is one of the things I want you to use, but not at the expense of all the other things that you have potential to achieve. See it as a boost to enable you to achieve even more. Use it as a currency to get what you need and support, but then push yourself to go beyond these limits. So, what further things do you want to play with?
I want to go bigger. I've been reading about the Bauhaus Design School after World War I, and it blew my mind how they pushed themselves to really establish such a grasp on the sense of modern and the process of working through abstracts to arrive at simplicity and beauty at all aspects. It was incredible.
I know about them, but what of all the breakthroughs that they had do you want to take on board?
I want to recreate aspects of the 1912 Oskar Schlemmer triadic ballet that they had in crazy geometric costumes that hampered the idea of dance, but gave the strength to the form of machine in a way, or the aesthetic of the future. I'm pretty sure the ballet sucked, or at least what I read as reactions. It was a little hard for the audience to get into it, but it had a fabulous characters which I can't get out of my head.
So who can you pull into your sphere to build this fantasy?
I was thinking my art class. I can get Miss Violent on board.
So give me some details.
I want the class over the next term to do fabulous costumes that step off from the Bauhaus Ballet in being outrageous, bordering on human architecture. So at the end of the term, I have 16 or so finished costumes, and I'd love to have an outcome to show them off in a spectacular way. I was thinking a theatrical fashion show, come ballet.
The first thing that comes to mind is that you are spreading out the creative process away from you, but you will have to somehow bring it all together. You will need to manage and guide them so that the outcome results is what you have in mind within reason. Managing their freedom and your vision are two different things and need delicate control. Somehow you need to do a design thinking process with them, and in doing so you might get them to buy in on the project. If you give them the freedom to participate, but inspire them to share your dream, it will be much better than what I suspect is the normal outcome of some of those art classes.
Sure, some do it the night before and don't care so.
You need to take control of their full engagement and get them to think it's really important and not just a school project. At least you have the Go Big thing as a currency to get them on board.
What could be added to the project if I had 16 wildly costumed models? If I rethink empathy of the audience, it is not just adornment, but as body architecture, which adds to the body's ability or adding or subtracting some skills or benefits. I don't want to necessarily go cybernetics, but a wider concept of how the body could be rebuilt. The models could, in a way, have other purposes than what we do as a day-to-day, and probably have restrictions and difficulties in some other movements.
I'm going to suggest something here which might sound weird, especially after the Go Big project, but if you involved models who had been given incredible extensions to their body, but then get them to try to do familiar things, it could be a clash between aesthetics and functionality that actually becomes a disability in some ways. It could be very telling and maybe humorous. Aesthetic or ideologically imposed disabilities that makes them feel elite as furthering humanity that comes with its own problems.
Now that is a statement on fashion.
It could be the Dadaist statement that life is silly so let's dance, a statement on anti-fashion.
Definitely Dada fun, but a tinge of looking at how we might become. The Triadic Ballet had real troubles with the costumes, breaking and transporting them around, plus the idea that no one got their ballet. It was an experiment to create something unlike anything else, so it made it hard to relate easily. Thinking about other insignificant outcomes, I could use some apps and the photography studio to capture each as a 3D model and try to organise it into a video or an interactive game. I'm not sure I can achieve or find people to help in that space, but it would be cool. I need something about action and how they move and a reason to move. I think croquet could be the go. I really need some activity in which they can participate, which they could try to achieve or not achieve, and how that would be funny or something.
I think you're on track here. The video game seems a great but quite large project. Wow, it could be a great incentive, and I think that at least capturing them in 3D would be quite possible.
Making the movement rigging and individual costume limitations could be very tricky. I think I will have to try and get a couple of programmers on board with me.
What else about the game might be incorporated?
So you have costume students that question fashion, or indeed question life, making it difficult to play croquet.
Well, it is a start. Maybe get the class to help you with this one. It might help to get them to buy into the project.
Each week we'll have a short exercise in sketching with a show and tell on the smaller groups of 4 or so.
Maybe you could make competitions between the groups for more outlandish of ideas. Competition sometimes brings students into action, and you don't want this to feel like any other subject.
Cool. We can play a mock-up of croquet to get the ideas of disability created by the costumes.
And how is it going to be marked? Only on the final outfit?
I'd love to, but that would encourage last-minute solutions, so we'll have to be the product as well as the exploration, detailed in a workbook. School loves that stuff.
You've thought this through pretty well. Will there be resistance of some saying that it's a silly project and they would rather just draw or what they consider art?
Yeah, that's always on the cards, but I'm hoping to create enthusiasm by giving the opportunity to be wild, and with an extra goal of 3D capture and possibly an addition of game, it could be really enticing. So after talking to Miss Violet, the art teacher, I found myself somewhat reluctantly the producer, which on reflection seemed a good way to get control and share my vision of what I have in mind. She knew what I was capable of from Go Big and thought it might be good training for me to take full control. I sit the class down on the first week after the initial exuberance of holidays, taking the period one and giving the talk explaining how the Bauhaus had situated in a devastating country after World War I and did so much under the philosophy of making the new world, the new Germany, building on the potential that factories and machines created in World War I and adapting its power to producing beautiful things for people's lives. Making mass production of wonderful things of artistic excellence. We discuss the costumes, reflect on how they experimented and embodied the aesthetic impact on changing what ballet was. I was starting to lose some of the class, so I organised a mock fashion show asking, after a short think tank, to decide on what sort of additions to their body, e.g. bubble legs, giant head, long arms and legs. I got them to consider how other normal things changed the way that they walked, like heavy bags, really tight jeans, hats or high heel shoes. They sort of got the idea and they acted out how it would change the way they moved, how they were hampered and disabled by the costumes, resulting in a funny walk, protrusions, taking up space, not fitting through doorways, etc. I went first, explaining that I had one leg much longer than the other, with roller skates on one foot. It made my body lean over one side from the long leg and sort of whip the leg around. There was no knee. I used a broom to help me with that effect. There were some long arms with wheels where the hands were, a head that was enormous and couldn't stay upright, one with hula hoops that she had to swivel as she walked. Some of the students got into it and others, I think, were trying to formulate their approach, and in the end got them at least to share an idea or two, as they may well have been shy to do the whole acting thing. Week 2. I gave another talk about the situation at the Bauhaus post-World War I and the flattened cities, and looked for the new world where it was shaped that machines and production could drag the people out of the devastation. Their mistrust of the old world and governments who had brought them to this situation fueled the gusto that they applied to creating and helping break the bonds that the past had on us all. The vision of the head of the school to bring together great artists and designers of the time, creating an atmosphere of limitless possibilities. What would be your reaction when 6,000 soldiers died every day for 4 years of war? Or one particular day, 57,000 soldiers died. We had a think tank on developing beyond the fashion to the game. I thought it would get them to be thinking of the spectacle to help connect them with the job at hand. Nearly everyone was a gamer, so it went pretty well. And it solved a fair bit of the issues and even introduced a few storylines around the croquet and the social universe in the new people and the fashion culture. I broke up the class into groups and got people to share and critique their work, like Sebastian had directed me to, and it seemed to work. I ran around and stuck my neck into the discussions and tried to push them out of their comfort zone by constantly giving them a license to go wild, which is not something that is that common at school. I talked to the photography teacher about the 3D capture, and he was on board, but linked me with 2 students who had been doing some work in the area, and it took a fair bit of convincing, but I kept up the enthusiasm and got them excited about the game. Everything went pretty well, though some students were falling behind, but losing or even culling some did not negate the project, so I had a confidence in the project being completed. they could possibly pull an all-nighter and get it in on the deadline anyway. Sue was in the class and she was a big help as she shared my enthusiasm, and we started to discuss the fashion show and her part in the game, as well as incorporating her dance expertise. We discussed the idea of having the battery-powered LED light strips that could be wrapped around certain limbs, and working from an app they could all work together from a remote control, changing the colours and flashing in time. To a distracted class, I played the music, Funeral Wake Fashion Parade, a piece of my music. To elicit reactions, I preface it by saying this does not have to be within your aesthetic, but consider how, as a sound, rhythm and atmosphere, it could generate a mood of which the costumes and the actions could be magnified. The reaction was good, though in a dark way, but certainly it seemed to give them a vision of people celebrating together in movement. I also played a video of African men doing a dance as pallbearers with a coffin on their shoulders. Watch these guys dig up the dust with the groove in a shuffle on the dusty streets. I get them to consider the rhythm and the themes which come to mind, which they could achieve. There was, with slight promoting from me, an idea of a wake with a priest, which could be morphed into a wedding, making it a very dark storyline. Then I played videos of fashion parades that were highly theatrical, with one projecting American culture using a car wash and fake movie sets and lights and incredible action. The fashion and the action portrayed a version of American past, and because it was shared visual themes, made sense of the fashion. I left the most important and relevant video till last, of a modern rendition of the Triadic Ballet, as well as a photo of the original Bauhaus production. I asked them to consider the impact and the statement the dancers are making to connect the architecture and that minimalist philosophy that the Bauhaus focused on to the progress of mankind beyond the practical decoration. The prediction of the future may not always be simple and can have conflicting issues. The simple geometric shape approach has a purity and a simplicity, but may also result in some impractical consequences. When you approach costumes, consider the amount of movement that will be necessary and possible dance options, and the ideas of not having hands or arms or faces, but have masks and helmets and tweezer hands. Don't discount the option that are very hard to navigate, like two people joined or being on stilts or on heavy protrusions. The costumes need to be spectacular, but it could make from any material. But for budget, probably paper, found objects, recycled things, as long as they're completely out of context, making them experimental. The exploration and inventiveness and the process is what Miss Violet is going to use to assess your work. I see this as a great opportunity to have fun, so I beg you not to think about this as a project to get high marks. Use it in a way to free yourself from constraints and stretch yourself. They seem to be quite taken with the robotic doll movements and with the ideas of masks, which I thought might help in the reluctance in the acting it out because of their shyness. I explained that the deadline is the end of term, the end of year, so the fashion show, or now considering a bocce game, will be at the last evening of school, so it could be a real celebration. I think that made everything in perspective of celebration that was missing before.